The Grand Hall of the Galactic Council fell silent as Ambassador Han walked to the speaking platform. His blue skin shimmered under the bright lights. The thin, tall alien moved with grace that came from evolving on a low-gravity world. But today, his usual calm was gone. His four-fingered hands shook as he placed them on the podium. "Honored representatives of the galaxy," Han began, his voice soft yet carrying to every corner of the massive chamber. "I come before you today not with diplomatic words, but with a plea for help." Han looked around the room. Over 200 species watched him. Most had been part of the Galactic Council for thousands of years. Humans, sitting in the back, had only joined 15 years ago. "The Void Swarm has attacked the luminary homeworld and 3 of our colony planets," Han continued. "Our people are peaceful. We have no weapons that can stop them. Already, millions of my people are dead." Gasps filled the chamber. The Void Swarm was not a new threat, but they had never attacked worlds so deep in Council space before. "The standard galactic defense forces have tried to help," Han said, "but their ships and weapons cannot adapt fast enough. The swarm learns. It changes. It grows stronger with each battle." Councillor Do, a reptilian exertion with scales that changed colors with his mood, stood up. His scales were now deep red, showing anger or fear. "What exactly are you asking for, Ambassador Han?" Do demanded. "More ships. More soldiers. We have already sent our best." Han took a deep breath. The room grew even quieter, as if everyone could sense what was coming. "I am asking for human help," he said finally. The chamber erupted in noise. Some representatives shouted in protest. Others whispered urgently to their assistants. A few simply stared at the human section in the back of the room. "Order. Order in the council." The chief speaker's voice boomed over the chaos. Slowly, the noise died down. Councillor Do's scales had turned almost black. "You want to bring Deathworlders into this. Humans are barely civilized. They evolved on a planet that should not support intelligent life." Many in the chamber nodded in agreement. Humans were new to the galactic community. They came from Earth, classified as a Class 12 death world, a planet with high gravity, extreme weather, dangerous predators, and constant natural disasters. Most species in the Council evolved on peaceful worlds with ideal conditions. Han stood tall. "Yes, that is exactly why we need them." The room fell silent again. "The Void Swarm adapts to our technology because our technology follows the same patterns as all Council species. We think alike because we evolved in similar environments." Han's voice grew stronger. "Humans think differently. They evolved facing constant danger. Their bodies and minds developed to survive conditions that would kill any of us in minutes." Ambassador Li stood up in the human section. He was not tall or physically impressive by human standards, but to many aliens in the room, he looked like a warrior. Humans had dense muscles, thick bones, and tough skin compared to most Council species. "May I speak?" Li asked. The chief speaker nodded. Li walked to the center of the chamber. Unlike most representatives who wore flowing robes or ceremonial attire, Li wore a simple dark suit. Humans didn't care much for the elaborate fashions of the Council. 15 years ago, you welcomed humanity into the Galactic Council." Li began. "Some of you did so reluctantly. You called us barbarians and savages behind closed doors." Several representatives looked away, uncomfortable. "You feared us because we come from a world you call a death world. But what you call a death world, we call home." Li's voice was calm but powerful. "You look at humans and see danger. We look at the galaxy and see the same thing we've always seen. Challenges to overcome." Li walked closer to Ambassador Han. "The Luminary have been kind to humans since our arrival. When others doubted us, they offered friendship. Now they need help, and you ask if humans should be involved." Li turned to face the entire chamber. "We will help, not because we seek glory, but because it is right." The room stayed quiet. No one knew how to respond. Li continued. Earth is sending the battleship Dauntless with General Kim and our best soldiers. 500 humans trained for space combat. We don't need your permission, but we would welcome your support. Counselor Doe stepped forward, scales now a mix of colors showing confusion and concern. You would send only 500 soldiers. The swarm numbers in the millions. For the first time, Lee smiled. Many aliens found human smiles unsettling. Too many teeth. Counselor, throughout human history, we have stories of small groups defeating vast armies. It's what we do best. When faced with impossible odds, humans become creative. The word creative caused several representatives to shift nervously. Human creativity was legendary and frightening. Humans had advanced from first flight to landing on their moon in just 66 years, a pace that had shocked the Council when they discovered Earth's history. Ambassador Han bowed slightly to Lee. The luminary welcomed human help, and thank you for your quick response. The chief speaker raised a hand. This is highly irregular. The Council should vote on. With respect, Lee interrupted. There is no time for a vote. The Dauntless is already preparing to leave Earth. General Kim will depart within 24 Earth hours. The chamber broke into loud discussions again. Some representatives argued furiously, while others seemed resigned. In the back of the room, a communication officer rushed to Ambassador Lee and whispered in his ear. Lee's face grew serious. He returned to the speaking platform. I just received word that the Void Swarm has completely overtaken the Luminary colony on Serenity. The defensive fleet there has been destroyed. He looked at Han. I'm sorry, Ambassador. Han's blue skin turned pale. Serenity had a population of 12 million. How soon can your General Kim reach our worlds? Han asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The Dauntless can travel faster than any ship in the Council fleet, Lee answered. We will reach your homeworld in 7 days. Counselor Doe laughed harshly. 7 days. The swarm will have consumed half the luminary systems by then. Lee turned to Doe. Then I suggest the Council stop arguing and start helping. We need information about the swarm. We need maps of luminary space. We need everything you have on their attack patterns. The chief speaker nodded slowly. The Council will provide all available resources. Lee bowed slightly. Thank you. He turned to Han. Ambassador, we would like a luminary liaison to join our mission. Someone who knows your worlds and people. My science officer, Jin, will join you. Han replied. She is young but brilliant. She has studied the swarm since they first appeared. Good, Lee said. We leave as soon as she arrives on Earth. As the Council meeting ended, many representatives approached the human section. Some offered help. Others warned Lee about the dangers of confronting the swarm. A few simply wanted to see these strange Deathworlders up close before they left. Back in the human embassy, Lee met with General Kim via secure video link. The general's face filled the screen, stern and focused. The situation is worse than we thought, Lee told him. The swarm destroyed Serenity completely. General Kim nodded. My team is ready. The Dauntless is being loaded with equipment now. The Luminary are sending a science officer named Jin to help, Lee said. Good. We'll need someone who understands what we're facing. Kim paused. Ambassador, the Council is right about one thing. 500 soldiers aren't many against a threat this size. Lee smiled. 500 human soldiers, General. Remember what happened when the Krull pirates attacked that mining colony last year? General Kim's serious face broke into a small smile. 3 humans with mining tools against 20 armed pirates. The pirates surrendered after 10 minutes. Exactly, Lee said. Humanity evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day. We're built for this fight. As the call ended, Lee looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, a peaceful species faced extinction. They had asked for humanity's help, despite their fears about these strange Deathworlders. The galaxy was about to learn what humans could really do. In 7 days, The Void Swarm would meet the children of Earth. Science Officer Jin stepped off the shuttle at Earth's Sol spaceport and immediately felt heavy. The gravity pulled at her thin body, making each step difficult. She had taken medication to help, but Earth's pull was still uncomfortable. How did humans live like this every day? A young human woman in a crisp military uniform approached. Science Officer Jin. I'm Lieutenant Choi. Welcome to Earth. Jin tried to stand straighter, fighting the gravity. Thank you, Lieutenant. I am here to assist with your mission to help my people. Lieutenant Choi nodded. General Kim is waiting at command. We have transport ready. As they walked through the spaceport, Jin noticed how different Earth was from her homeworld. Everything seemed solid, heavy, built to last. Humans moved quickly despite the gravity that weighed Jin down. They were loud, too. Their voices carried across the terminal as they called to each other. Is Earth always this intense? Jin asked. Lieutenant Choi smiled. This is actually a quiet day. Wait until you see Seoul's downtown. The transport took them to Earth Military Command, a massive complex of buildings surrounded by high walls. Soldiers trained in open fields, running and fighting in practice battles. Jin watched them through the window, amazed at their speed and strength. They're training to fight in even heavier gravity, Lieutenant Choi explained. Following Jin's gaze, it makes them stronger for normal conditions. Jin could not imagine voluntarily making gravity stronger. That seems uncomfortable. Growth often is, Lieutenant Choi said simply. General Kim met them in the main command center. He was older than Lieutenant Choi, with gray hair and a face that showed years of experience. He did not smile when he greeted Jin, but his voice was respectful. Science Officer Jin, thank you for coming. We need to learn everything you know about the Void Swarm. Jin bowed slightly. A gesture she had learned was polite on Earth. The swarm first appeared 2 years ago on the outer edges of Council space. They consume all organic matter and use it to grow. They learn from each encounter, adapting to weapons used against them. General Kim nodded. Biological adaptation at an accelerated rate, similar to Earth's insects, but with collective intelligence. Yes, Jin said, surprised by his quick understanding. But much faster. Weapons that work in one battle are useless in the next. Then we need weapons that change as quickly as they do, General Kim said. He turned to Lieutenant Choi. Take Science Officer Jin to Captain Park. I want them working together on tactical options. Lieutenant Choi led Jin through the complex to a large room filled with weapons, screens showing battle simulations, and maps of luminary space. A man stood in the center, directing several other humans as they worked. Captain Park, this is Science Officer Jin from the Luminary, Lieutenant Choi announced. Captain Park turned. He was younger than General Kim, but had the same intense focus in his eyes. Welcome to Earth. I understand your people are in serious danger. Jin felt a wave of emotion. Since leaving her homeworld, she had tried to stay professional, to focus on the mission. But Captain Park's simple acknowledgement of her people's suffering broke through her calm. Yes, the swarm has already destroyed one colony completely. They move toward our homeworld now. Captain Park nodded. Then we have no time to waste. Show me everything you have on the swarm's attack patterns. For the next 3 hours, Jin explained what the Luminary knew about the Void Swarm. Captain Park asked questions Jin had never considered. He wanted to know about the swarm's behavior in different environments, how quickly they adapted, whether they showed any signs of central intelligence. You think differently than Council military leaders, Jin observed. Humans evolved as predators, Captain Park explained. We understand how to hunt and how to think like what we hunt. Jin felt uncomfortable. On her world, bringing up humans' predator evolution was considered rude. But Captain Park spoke about it plainly, without shame. The Luminary evolved as gatherers, Jin said carefully. We lived in harmony with our environment, which makes you excellent at cooperation and sustainable living. Captain Park replied. Every evolutionary path has strengths. Against the swarm, we need both our approaches. A loud alarm suddenly blared through the complex. Jin jumped, startled by the noise. "Training drill," Captain Park explained calmly. "Come with me. You should see this." He led Jin to a large training room where soldiers were putting on heavy equipment. Sergeant Ba, a stocky woman with short hair, shouted orders. The room was hot, at least 10 degrees warmer than the rest of the building. "Heat training," Captain Park explained. "The swarm prefers warm environments, like your colonies." Jin watched as the soldiers began running through obstacles while carrying heavy packs. The heat in the room increased, and sweat poured down the humans' faces. None of them stopped or complained. "This would kill a luminary," Jin said quietly. "It would be uncomfortable for humans in normal situations too," Captain Park replied. "But we can adapt to it when needed." Sergeant Ba noticed them watching and came over. She looked at Jin with open curiosity. "So you're our alien expert." Her voice was rough, but not unkind. "Yes, I have studied the swarm since they first appeared," Jin answered. Sergeant Ba nodded. "Good. My team needs to know what we're facing. Can you tell them about the swarm's physical form? Weaknesses, anything that might help in close combat." Jin blinked in surprise. "Close combat. You cannot fight the swarm directly. They will overwhelm you." Sergeant Ba smiled, showing teeth in a way that reminded Jin that humans were predators. "You'd be surprised what humans can do in a fight." Before Jin could respond, a loud crash came from across the room. A training machine had malfunctioned and caught fire. Flames spread quickly along one wall. Jin stepped back instinctively, moving away from danger. But the humans did something that shocked her. They ran toward the fire. Captain Park and Sergeant Ba rushed to help soldiers pull equipment away from the flames. Lieutenant Choi grabbed a fire extinguisher and fought the blaze directly. Within minutes, they had contained the fire. A soldier had been injured, with burns along one arm. A medic treated him on the spot, while the soldier joked about his injury. "Why did you run toward the fire?" Jin asked Captain Park when he returned. "That defies survival instinct." "Not human survival instinct," Captain Park explained. "On Earth, danger is often best faced directly. Running from predators just triggers their chase response. Fire spreads if not controlled quickly. We learned long ago that sometimes the safest path is through the danger, not away from it." Jin thought about this as she followed Captain Park back to the command center. The humans' approach to danger was completely foreign to her people. Luminary survived by avoiding threats and finding peaceful solutions. Humans seemed to confront threats head-on. That evening, Jin watched from the observation deck as the battleship Dauntless prepared for launch. The massive ship looked dangerous even sitting in its dock. Weapon systems covered its hull, and its engines glowed with barely contained power. Lieutenant Choi joined her. "Impressive, isn't it? Newest ship in the fleet." "It looks aggressive," Jin said carefully. "It's designed to protect," Lieutenant Choi corrected, "like Earth predators that evolved to defend their young." Jin turned to face the lieutenant. "Do you truly believe 500 humans can defeat the swarm when thousands of council troops could not?" Lieutenant Choi considered the question. "I believe we will try solutions no one else has tried. Humans have a saying, 'Necessity is the mother of invention.' When our backs are against the wall, we become our most creative." "The council fears human creativity," Jin admitted. "They say it is unpredictable." "That's exactly what the swarm won't expect," Lieutenant Choi said with a smile. As the Dauntless prepared for launch the next morning, Jin stood with the command crew on the bridge. General Kim gave final orders while Captain Park reviewed battle plans. Sergeant Ba checked weapons systems with her team. Jin felt the massive engines powered up, the ship humming with energy. In 7 days, they would reach her homeworld. Jin wondered if they would find anything left to save. "Having doubts?" Captain Park asked, noticing her expression. "The swarm has never been defeated," Jin said quietly. Captain Park nodded. There's a first time for everything. Humans specialize in doing the impossible. As the Dauntless lifted off from Earth, Jin watched the blue planet shrink below them. These strange, strong creatures had evolved on that dangerous world. Now they were heading to fight for her peaceful people. Jin didn't know if humans could save the Luminary, but watching them prepare for battle, she began to hope. The Dauntless dropped out of faster-than-light travel with a flash of light. The view screen on the bridge showed the Luminary colony world of Serenity, but it no longer looked serene. Dark patches covered large areas of the once green planet. From orbit, they looked like spreading ink stains. Captain Park knew what they were: the Void Swarm consuming everything in its path. "We're too late," Jin whispered, staring at her colony world. "They've already breached the surface defenses." General Kim studied the tactical displays. There are still life signs in the main settlement. The central city dome is holding. "For now," Sergeant Ba said grimly. She pointed to sensor readings. "Those barriers won't last another day." Captain Park turned to General Kim. "Sir, request permission to lead a ground team. If there are survivors, we need to establish a defense perimeter." General Kim nodded. "Approved. Take 3 squads. Lieutenant Choi will coordinate from the ship." Jin stepped forward. "I should go too. I know the colony layout." General Kim looked at Jin with surprise. The Luminary had not shown any desire to join combat operations during planning, but he nodded. "Stay with Captain Park at all times." Within an hour, 4 dropships launched from the Dauntless toward the surface. Jin sat beside Captain Park in the lead ship, her thin fingers gripping the safety harness tightly. 30 human soldiers checked weapons and equipment around them. "First combat drop?" Captain Park asked Jin. "First anything drop," she replied. "Luminary don't usually fall from the sky on purpose." Captain Park smiled. "Focus on your breathing. The landing is the worst part." The dropship pilot's voice came over the speakers. "Entering atmosphere in 30 seconds. We have movement on the ground near the landing zone." "Swarm activity?" Captain Park asked. "Confirmed," the pilot replied. "They're gathering below us." Jin's eyes widened. "They know we're coming. They never responded to ships this quickly before." "They're learning," Captain Park said. He turned to the soldiers. "Helmets on. Full bioprotection. Remember your training." The dropship shook violently as it entered the atmosphere. Jin closed her eyes, fighting nausea. When she opened them again, Captain Park was standing, already moving toward the door. "Landing in 10 seconds, the pilot called. The dropship hit the ground hard. The door opened with a hiss, and Captain Park was the first one out, weapon ready. "Move! Move! Secure the perimeter!" he shouted. Jin followed the humans into chaos. The landing area was a plaza near the main settlement dome. What had once been a beautiful open space with fountains and gardens was now a nightmare landscape. The swarm covered everything in a moving black mass. They didn't look like any life form Jin had seen before. Each individual creature was small, like an insect, but they moved together in massive groups that took shapes, waves, tentacles, even crude hand-like formations. "Form up. Defense pattern Alpha," Captain Park ordered. The human soldiers moved with practiced precision, forming a circle around the landing zone. Their weapons fired in coordinated bursts, cutting through the swarm masses. A wave of swarm creatures surged toward them from the left. Sergeant Ba's squad met it with concentrated fire. "They're adapting to our weapon frequency," Sergeant Ba shouted, switching to alternate fire pattern. Jin watched in amazement as the humans adjusted their tactics instantly. Where Luminary or other Council species would need time to process changes, these humans reacted almost instinctively. "Jin, is that the main settlement entrance?" Captain Park pointed to a large structure ahead. "Yes, the environmental dome controls are there." Jin had to shout over the noise of battle. "We need to reach it. Ba, take point," Captain Park ordered. Sergeant Ba nodded and moved forward, leading her squad through the densest mass of swarm creatures. The black tide parted under their weapons' fire, but closed again quickly behind them. A soldier screamed as swarm creatures got past his armor at the neck seal. His squad mates dragged him forward, one applying a medical patch to the wound while still firing her weapon one-handed. How can they keep fighting while injured? Jin asked Captain Park as they ran. Humans evolved to handle pain, he said simply. It's a survival mechanism. They reached the dome entrance, but the door was sealed. Jin rushed to the control panel and entered her access codes. Nothing happened. They've changed the security protocols, Jin said, frustration clear in her voice. Lieutenant Choi's voice came through their comms from the Dauntless. I'm detecting luminary life signs inside. They must have locked down when the swarm breached the outer defenses. Can you bypass it? Captain Park asked Jin. She shook her head. Not quickly. This would take hours to. Before she could finish, Surgeon Ba stepped forward with a small device. Stand back. What is that? Jin asked. Universal key, Surgeon Ba said with a grim smile. She placed the device on the door seam and pressed a button, also known as explosives. But the structural integrity. Jin started to protest. The device detonated with a controlled blast that cut precisely along the door seal. The heavy door shifted slightly. Push, Captain Park ordered. 4 soldiers put their shoulders against the massive door. Jin watched in shock as their muscles strained, and the door slowly opened. The physical strength required would be impossible for most council species. Inside the dome, terrified luminary citizens backed away as the humans entered. They had never seen humans before, and the armored soldiers with weapons looked like monsters to them. Jin stepped forward quickly. It's okay. They're allies. They've come to help. A luminary official approached cautiously. Science Officer Jin, we received word you were bringing help, but there's no time to explain, Jin said. How many survivors are in the dome? About 5,000, the official said. We've been holding out for 3 days, but the dome power is failing. The swarm is trying to get in through the ventilation systems. Captain Park joined them. We need to establish a defensive position and evacuate your people to our ship. The official looked at Captain Park with open fear. Are you human? Yes. Captain Park, Earth Defense Force. He didn't offer his hand, knowing that Luminary didn't touch during greetings. My soldiers are securing the perimeter, but we need to move quickly. A loud alarm sounded through the dome. The Luminary official's eyes widened. They've breached the lower levels. They're inside. Captain Park reacted immediately. Ba, take your squad to the lower levels. Choi, we need those evacuation ships now. Through their comms, Lieutenant Choi responded, sending the remaining dropships. ETA 7 minutes. We may not have 7 minutes, Captain Park said grimly. Jin watched as the human soldiers ran toward danger again. It still amazed her, this human instinct to confront threats directly. In the lower levels, Surgeon Bai and her squad found hundreds of swarm creatures pouring through a rupture in the dome wall. They were adapting before her eyes, their forms changing to resist the humans' weapons. They're getting smarter, Surgeon Ba called to Captain Park over the comms. Standard tactics aren't working. Captain Park turned to Jin. You've studied them. What are we missing? Jin thought quickly. They adapt to specific threats. The Council always uses the same weapons and tactics, so the swarm learns to counter them. So we need to be unpredictable, Captain Park said. He switched to the general comm channel. All squads, random fire patterns. Keep changing your approach. Don't let them adapt to any single strategy. The human soldiers immediately began switching weapons, firing patterns, and tactics. Some used explosives, others physical combat, others environmental controls to change temperature and atmosphere. The swarm's advance slowed, confused by the constantly changing threats. Lieutenant Choi's voice came through the comms again. Dropships arriving now. Northeast entrance is clear for evacuation. Move the civilians out, Captain Park ordered. Vi, hold that breach as long as you can. The luminary moved toward the evacuation point, guided by human soldiers. Jin helped organize them, explaining that the strange armored beings were allies. In the lower level, Sergeant Ba's squad fought a losing battle. The breach was growing, more swarm pouring through every minute. We can't hold much longer, they reported. There are too many. A group of luminary children had been trapped by falling debris, cut off from the evacuation route. Sergeant Ba saw them and made a quick decision. Covering fire, she ordered her squad. Then she ran toward the children, directly through a mass of swarm creatures. The swarm swarmed over her as she reached the children. Using her body as a shield, she cleared a path for them to escape. Run, she shouted to the children. Follow the lights to the exit. The luminary children fled as Sergeant Ba fought off the swarm. Her armor was failing, creatures getting through the seams. Captain Park received her final transmission. Children safe. Breach too big to hold. Get them out, Captain. Then silence. As the last evacuation ships lifted off, Captain Park stood at the door, firing covering shots. Jin pulled at his arm. We must go. The dome is collapsing. Ba is still down there, he said grimly. Captain, she's gone, Jin said softly. She saved those children. Don't waste her sacrifice. Captain Park nodded once and boarded the dropship. As they rose into the air, they watched the dome collapse, the swarm flowing over it like a black tide. Back on the Dauntless, the rescued luminary were given medical attention and food. Jin found Captain Park on the observation deck, looking down at the planet. Your sergeant, Jin said carefully. She gave her life for luminary children she never met. That's what humans do, Captain Park said simply. We protect those who need protection. Jin was quiet for a moment. I've been recording human behavior for the Luminary Archives. I thought I was documenting a dangerous species. Now I'm not sure what to write. Captain Park turned to her. Write that we're just as complex as any other species, capable of great violence and great sacrifice. The Dauntless moved away from Serenity, carrying the survivors. But the battle had only just begun. The swarm was still spreading, and the luminary homeworld was next. Jin looked at the tired human soldiers around her. These strange creatures from a death world had fought with unexpected courage. For the first time since the swarm appeared, Jin felt something new. Hope. Lieutenant Choi joined them, her uniform torn and dirty from the fight. General Kim is on the comms. The main swarm force has been detected. They're gathering around the luminary homeworld. Captain Park nodded. Then that's where we're going next. The Dauntless arrived at the luminary homeworld 3 days later. The beautiful blue-green planet was surrounded by a galactic council defense fleet. Dozens of ships from different species formed a protective barrier. But beyond them loomed something much larger. What is that? Captain Park asked, staring at the view screen. A massive structure hung in space near the planet. It looked like a giant black web, pulsing with strange energy. Smaller swarm ships moved around it like insects. That wasn't in any of our reports, Jin said, her voice tight with fear. The swarm has never built anything that large before. Lieutenant Choi studied the sensor readings. It's generating unusual energy patterns, almost like a brain. General Kim joined them on the bridge, a central intelligence node. That explains how they've been adapting so quickly. A transmission came through from the Council fleet. An admiral from the exertion forces appeared on screen. His scales were pale with stress. Dauntless, this is Admiral Tech. We've been holding position for 2 days, but we cannot break through their defenses. That structure is coordinating their attacks. We see it. Admiral, General Kim responded. We'll need to combine our forces for a direct assault. Admiral Tech's scales darkened. Direct assault. Impossible. We've lost 15 ships already trying to get close to that thing. With respect, Admiral, General Kim said firmly. Humans specialize in the impossible. The Dauntless docked with the Council command ship for a strategy meeting. Jin accompanied General Kim and Captain Park to represent luminary interests. The Council commanders looked at the humans with obvious doubt. "You brought only one ship?" Admiral Tech asked. "We have 50, and we can't break through." "Sometimes it's not about numbers," General Kim replied. He turned to the tactical display. "We believe that structure is controlling the swarm. Destroy it, and they may lose coordination." Lieutenant Choi presented her findings. "The node is producing the unique frequency that matches the swarm's adaptation rate. It's essentially their central brain." Admiral Tech shook his head. "We've tried attacking it directly. The swarm defense is too strong." "Then we need to get inside it," Captain Park said. The room fell silent. Inside, Admiral Tech's scales turned almost white. "That's suicide." Jin watched the humans carefully. They didn't seem bothered by the idea of a mission that other species considered certain death. "We've analyzed its structure," Lieutenant Choi continued, pointing to specific areas on the display. "There are entry points here and here. A small team could infiltrate while the main fleet provides distraction." "And once inside?" Admiral Tech asked. Captain Park stepped forward. "We've developed a targeted pathogen based on Science Officer Jin's research. It attacks the swarm's cellular structure, but is harmless to other life forms." Jin nodded. "We combined human immune system properties with luminary biological science. The pathogen should disrupt the swarm's ability to communicate and adapt." Admiral Tech looked skeptical. "This plan requires someone to physically enter the swarm node and release this pathogen." "Yes," General Kim said simply. "My team volunteers." "I'll lead the insertion team," Captain Park added. Jin took a deep breath. "I will go too. The delivery system needs my expertise." Captain Park turned to her in surprise. "Jin, this isn't your fight." "It is exactly my fight," she replied firmly. "These are my people, and I have learned from humans that sometimes we must face danger directly." The mission launched 6 hours later. The Council fleet engaged the swarm ships in a massive battle, drawing attention away from the Dauntless as it approached the node from a different angle. A small shuttle carried Captain Park, Lieutenant Choi, Jin, and a team of 10 human soldiers toward a breach point on the massive structure. "Approaching target," the pilot reported. "Minimal swarm activity in this sector. The diversion is working." The shuttle attached to the node's outer membrane. Captain Park turned to his team. "Remember, we stay together. The pathogen must reach the central chamber to be effective. Full bioprotection at all times." They cut through the membrane and entered the swarm node. Inside was unlike anything they had seen before. The passages were organic, pulsing with life. Black swarm creatures moved through transparent tubes like blood in veins. The walls themselves seemed alive, responding to their presence with subtle movements. "This way," Lieutenant Choi whispered, following the scanner readings. "The central chamber is half a kilometer in." They moved carefully through the twisting passages. The environment inside the node was hot and humid, difficult to breathe even with their equipment. Jin struggled with the conditions, but refused to slow the team down. "You okay?" Captain Park asked her quietly. "Your planet is worse than this," Jin replied, trying to sound brave. "If humans can handle Earth, I can handle this." Captain Park smiled behind his helmet. "You're tougher than you think." As they approached the central chamber, the node began to respond to their presence. Passages closed behind them. Swarm creatures gathered in greater numbers. "It knows we're here," Lieutenant Choi warned. "We need to move faster." They ran through the narrowing corridors, firing at swarm formations that tried to block their path. 2 soldiers fell as the creatures overwhelmed them, their screams cutting off in the team's comm systems. The remaining team reached a massive chamber at the center of the node. A pulsing structure hung in the middle, connected to the walls by thousands of organic tendrils. It glowed with strange energy. "That's it," Jin said. "The control center. Lieutenant Choi prepared the pathogen delivery system, a device they had built on the Dauntless. I need 3 minutes to calibrate this to the specific frequency. We may not have 3 minutes, Captain Park said, as swarm creatures poured into the chamber from multiple entrances. The soldiers formed a defensive circle around Lieutenant Choi and Jin as they worked. The fighting was intense, hand-to-hand in some cases as the creatures got past their gunfire. Almost there, Jin said, adjusting the final settings. Suddenly, the node shuddered violently. Lieutenant Choi checked her communicator. The Council fleet broke through. They're attacking the outer structure. The attack caused damage to the chamber. A section of the ceiling collapsed, crushing the pathogen device and knocking Lieutenant Choi to the ground. No, Jin cried, rushing to check the device. It's damaged. The automated delivery system is destroyed. Captain Park helped Lieutenant Choi up. Is there another way to deliver it? Jin looked at the remains of the device, then at the pulsing core of the node. Yes, but someone would need to carry the pathogen container directly to the core and activate it manually. How close? Captain Park asked. Physical contact with the core, Jin said, her voice shaking. But the radiation from the core would be fatal to whoever does it. Lieutenant Choi picked up the pathogen container from the broken device. Before anyone could stop her, she ran toward the core. Choi! Captain Park shouted. Get them out, Captain. Lieutenant Choi called back. I've got this. The remaining soldiers provided covering fire as Lieutenant Choi fought her way to the core. The swarm creatures seemed to understand her intent, swarming more intensely around her. But her training on Earth, in conditions far harsher than most species could imagine, had prepared her for this moment. Lieutenant Choi reached the core. The pathogen container in her hand, she pressed it against the pulsing surface and activated it. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The core's color changed from black to sickly gray. The swarm creatures around them began to move erratically, losing coordination. It's working, Jin cried. The pathogen is disrupting their network. Retreat, Captain Park ordered. Back to the shuttle. Jin looked back at Lieutenant Choi, still at the core. We can't leave her. She knew what this meant, Captain Park said, his voice tight with emotion. We honor her by completing the mission. The team fought their way back through the node, which was now shaking violently as its systems failed. They reached the shuttle just as large sections of the structure began to collapse. As they pulled away, they watched the massive node break apart. Throughout the battle zone, swarm ships lost control, drifting aimlessly or crashing into each other. The Council fleet, seeing the change, pressed their advantage. Within hours, the battle was over. The swarm had been defeated. On the luminary homeworld, Ambassador Han welcomed the returning heroes. A ceremony was held to honor those who had fallen, especially Sergeant Bai and Lieutenant Choi. The luminary people will never forget your sacrifice, Ambassador Han said formally. Your names will be recorded in our most sacred archives. General Kim accepted the honor on behalf of Earth. We came because it was right. We would do it again. Ambassador Han presented a glowing crystal to General Kim. This is the Star of Valor, our highest honor. For thousands of years, it has only been given to luminary heroes. Today, we give it to Earth. Jin stood with Captain Park during the ceremony. She had been appointed as the new liaison between Earth and the luminary. What will you tell your people about humans now? Captain Park asked her. Jin smiled. That Deathworlders make the best allies. That sometimes the most dangerous path is the safest one. That humans run toward fires, not away from them. A group of luminary children approached them cautiously. One small girl looked up at Captain Park with large, curious eyes. Are you a monster or a hero? She asked innocently. Captain Park knelt down to her level. Neither. I'm just a human. Jin placed her hand on the child's shoulder. And that, she said softly, is something extraordinary. As the Dauntless prepared to return to Earth, the Galactic Council sent a special message. Humans would no longer be seated at the back of the council chamber. They had earned a place of honor among the stars. The Deathworlders had answered a plea for help with unprecedented valor, and the galaxy would never see them the same way again.